All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another wonderful version of Ask Me Anything with your founder, visionary, and chief strategic officer of the day, Mr. Tim Vasko. Good morning, Tim.
Morning, Jay. How are you today?
I'm doing great. We've got a number of attendees on the line already. I don't think we need to wait for more people to show up. Let's start this thing on time and get this thing going.
Let's go.
Do you have any updates for us?
Well, let's see. This week, I can announce that we have had some really positive press in Africa. If you go to the Rogers Capital Facebook page, you'll see that they've announced our relationship in Africa. And actually, Jay, we're pretty fortunate to have Dan Gay, our Chief Marketing Officer, here in the room with us today. So, Dan, maybe you can tell people when our press release is going to go out in North America, since Africa's a little ahead of us.
Yeah, Africa's ahead of us. So you always want to make sure your press releases go out in the early part of the week. So Monday morning, we'll have a press release that will come out about Mauritius. And we have other press releases ready to go. Once we'll be talking about that in the next coming weeks. But
yeah, and that's right. And so in addition to that, we attended or one of our partners attended the MJ BizCon conference down in
New Orleans.
New Orleans, that's right. And we've got a whole new business model for the supply chain and cannabis industry on Blockcerts, and it's now posted live on the Blockcerts site, which most of you can't see because we kind of hid it, but we're going to have some exciting updates to the Blockcerts website, which makes announcements about all these things happening behind the scenes. So we're really busy, Jay.
Great. Well, as Tim said, Tim, Dan, and I are all together here in Denver. So we're conducting this decentralized Ask Me Anything in a more centralized fashion this time. But we do have some questions, Tim, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. The first one is, when will investors have credit to the B-Certs tokens so that they can use them to conduct their own smart contracts, et cetera?
Well, as soon as you, I'm not sure I understand the question, but the technology is ready to go. So as soon as you have a smart contract, if you own a token, you give us what your use case is, and we build it out. So effectively today, all we need to know is, what is your smart contract? What's your use case? What we are doing is we're building templates right now. So we're building templates so that if you don't know what your use case is, we're going to use the most common use cases out there and put them live. And that's our development curve right now. But if there's something that you have a request on, get it to us. And if you're a token holder or you want to become a token holder, then we will put that into the queue, and the technology's there. We're live, we're ready to go.
And that kind of opens us up to what we were just talking about, which is software licensing and tokens, and the ability for companies to actually purchase tokens to put their business on the blockchain. And do you want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, everything from Bitcoin to blockchain is software. This is all software. And I think that gets lost in all the hype. But what we've done is we've reinvented technology, or we've made it better. We've made it more distributed. We've taken technology from the 40-year-old model of you're always renting technology to you now have full control and you become the owner. So it's like you became Microsoft or Google. You have the power to hold that in your own hands. So today what you can do is you can pick up a platform of your own on the Blockcerts. That's called a node. And in that node, you can do all kinds of functionality, and those are tokens. So effectively, that's what we call, when I refer to use case, that's what I mean, is how would you want to use this? What kind of ideas do you have? If it's to trade tokens and make a profit on those tokens and build smart contracts and things like that, it starts looking a lot like the securities. So we've got a securities offering out there. But if it's to build software, build a business, do a use case, and own tokens that in the future increase your value. I mean, think about it. When you rent a house, for example, or you rent a condo or an apartment, that rent goes to the landlord and it's gone forever. But what's happening to the real estate underneath that? We're sitting in Denver, Colorado here, and I can tell you, I left Denver 20 years ago. Real estate, I wish I would have held the real estate I owned 20 years ago because it increased in value. If I'd have been renting that whole time, I'd have had no value.
Right.
So real estate always increases in value. We're looking at the exact same thing now with software. Why wouldn't we do that with our software then? Why wouldn't we own our software, own our tokens, and down the road, maybe I don't live in the house anymore. That doesn't mean I don't get a benefit from the equity. That's what has made all these software giants, is they benefit from the equity. We're simply now giving that new business model to the world of software.
So to simplify, you could say that somebody who's on a SaaS license where they're buying a seat, but they're actually renting their business space, whereas with B-Certs tokens, they'd actually be owning their business space.
That's right. It's like owning your own office building.
Great. And that gets to the Airbnb example, but I'm in the process, everybody, of writing a new investor deck because we closed out our 5-cent offering. We're going to 10 cents. We're at 10 cents right now. We've actually had some investment at 10 cents. And we are going to be going to 25 cents in the near future. And as our story evolves and as the investment proposition evolves, the first investor deck we did was great. It tells our story, but it tells, what is blockchain? How do we use blockchain? What is Blockcerts? The next investor deck is going to be geared more towards, as an investor, what benefit do I get from blockchain? And what does Blockcerts mean to me as an investor? Just like if I'm a company that wants to buy B-Certs tokens, I want to know what it means to my company. What are the benefits? I don't really care about the background noise. I care about what's in it for me. So as we go along, we're talking about the difference between owning an Airbnb place and renting it out to other people. And that's your Inc.
That's right.
Right?
That's
so could
exactly
you expand on that a little bit so that the investors in the audience can see where they're going to be getting their money, and maybe they don't want to sell their B-Certs tokens, maybe they want to hold on to them?
Yeah, well, I love the Airbnb example, and we all know what Airbnb is doing to the real estate industry as well as the hotel industry, but it's a great example. If I own a condo and it's a second home and it happens to be in San Francisco, for what Airbnb did is it took the hotel industry model and turned it on its head. It allowed you to become a hoteler and own and to lease that room or that entire condo out to people just on the net. So if you're the owner, you effectively became a hoteler. And that's now the largest hotel chain in the world, Airbnb, without Airbnb itself ever owning any real estate. That's what we're doing at Blockcerts. We aren't going to own any of the software. We're going to be the largest network of providers of the SaaS solutions and software that you need for your business in the world. And all of our token holders are going to benefit from that.
They're the owners.
They're the owners.
Not
so
Blockcerts.
Here's how Inc. works. It works the same way. Airbnb runs the network. So our Inc. will have a component in it that helps us keep that network alive, just like Airbnb. When you get $100 a night, $10 goes to Airbnb, $90 goes to the owner. That's how Inc. works, Jay. It's the exact same thing. So we're Airbnb-ing, sorry, hard to say, Airbnb-ing software. We're Airbnb-ing the SaaS industry. SaaS is $100 billion a year industry, $100 billion a year in license fees. We're simply going to turn that same model, just like the hotel industry did, or Airbnb did to the hotel industry, over to our token holders. Go for it. If you're a business owner and you want to use this, great. If you're a token holder and you want to use this in a different way, like you got an extra spare room, you got spare tokens, Give them out to another business, rent them out because you're not using them. That's how it works.
I would also like to talk about rent versus own in software.
Right.
Because there are many issues if you're a business, if you're renting, where somebody can hold you over the barrel if something happens. And
that's right.
If you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, perfect example, Dan. In how many of us have had this experience where a credit card, I think, Dan, you were even telling me, a credit card didn't go through or a date expires.
A date expired on a credit card.
Wasn't picked up.
Right.
It gets declined. It's on a Friday. I've got a big marketing blast ready to go out or whatever.
Yep.
My invoices.
Right. The company is not open on Saturday and Sunday in terms of updating the card. So you're dead in the water.
You're dead in the water. And that assumes that that software company even has a phone line to call.
Correct.
Try and call Google.
Yeah.
When's the last time you talked to somebody at Google? Right?
Right.
Like a lot of these guys don't even have a customer service center or a way that you could possibly talk to. So the difference between renting and owning is that when you own, yes, you have to pay your mortgage on your real estate property or whatever. If it's a mortgage, you got to pay the bank. But there are procedures that will never shut you down immediately. Right? That doesn't exist in the software industry today. It doesn't go through. All the machine knows is it didn't go through. I don't actually believe that the software guys want to take people off. But how many of us have been in that position?
Right.
And it's an awful position to be in. You're shut down. I think it's time that we change that model.
Right.
Great. Next question. How can Blockcerts help a company needing to raise funds, and can they have their own tokens under Bcerts?
The answer is you can have your own tokens, you can have your own funds, you can run your own portal. The only caution I'll tell you is there are a lot of laws. And this team at Blockcerts has spent a tremendous amount of time making sure that we know to the best of our ability what the laws are in multiple jurisdictions, and we're very cautious about that. Hence, we're not one of these big hype ICOs that all of a sudden is in trouble with regulators and so forth, which is not what we're going to be or ever will intend to be. And we will help anybody who wants to do that go through the process. If you become a token holder, we'll help you. Can it be your own token? Absolutely. Just actually, any ICO, most ICOs are built on Ethereum. You can do the exact same thing on Blockcerts, only you'll get to utility faster. And we can explain utility later about how that helps you become a new business model to raise capital and bring capital in to run your business. But that's part of what we do at Blockcerts, is we're not just going to throw it out there and let you run on your own and run afoul of regulators and things like that. We've got a whole network of professionals and people who know what they're doing here. And we're here to make sure you can access these new markets and these new models. We're all about accessible collaboration.
So if you are a startup and you want to raise funds through an ICO, the best way, the first step would be, if you want to utilize Blockcerts, would be to contact us. And we have plenty of ways you can contact us, through chat on the website, to emails, to LinkedIn, to registering on Blockcerts. So there are all kinds of ways to contact us, but let's talk about what you want to do and what mission you want to accomplish before you start running down that ICO road, because the last thing we want to do is see people get in trouble by running afoul of the regulators.
And you know, Jay, what I'd like to tell everybody is go on YouTube and look for John Oliver last week tonight on cryptocurrencies and blockchain, because that will tell you about some of the hype and some of the it's hilarious, first of all, but it's also very true. There's been so much fraud and hype in the industry, and we're trying to bring legitimacy and strength to this industry because it's so important. We don't want people to stub their toes or go wrong. If you want to do it right, please get in touch with us. We'd be happy to steer you, even if you choose not to use Blockcerts. We're going to at least tell you some of the things that you can do differently to avoid.
So we're open for other questions. You can just use the chat function on the webinar panel, And what I want to do right now is go back to the very first question we asked, which is, when will investors have credit to the VCerts tokens? So we have investors who have already bought under a simple agreement for future tokens. So they don't actually own their tokens right now. But what if one of these investors has a business that they want to put on the blockchain today? Could we actually issue them tokens against their simple agreement for future tokens so that they can be up and running without running afoul of any securities laws?
Yes, yes. We haven't minted all the Blockcerts tokens yet. We're waiting for our use cases to come live, but we can build a use case and run it on the blockchain and run it through our Genesis block right now, and you will be effectively running smart contracts.
Great. Then I have another question, and this is from Gwendolyn. And Gwendolyn would like to know, could you give us an example of a smart contract and how that would benefit a business as opposed to the traditional way of doing business?
Yeah, I'd love to. If I send a contract, I'm going to pick on Dan for a minute. Actually, Dan and I experienced this.
I was just writing this down. That's an example.
So I send a contract, and we're doing some marketing work, and I send a contract to Dan, and we're working through what the terms of that contract are, and it's a PDF. It doesn't really matter if it's DocuSign or WriteSign or any of these things. Right. But at the end of the day, they're all Word documents converted to PDF, right? And that document goes over, Dan makes his edits, sends it back to me and says, yeah, Tim, good to go, sign it, and the first payment's due, it's $2,500, right?
Right, which that was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
3 weeks.
Sends it back to me, and I'm like, great, I sign it, I send it back to Dan, Dan sends it back to the agency, and the agency then has to generate a bill. The bill goes out, agency sends the bill to Dan, because they don't actually know I'm the guy that Dan's working with.
Right.
Dan sends the bill to me.
Well, prior to that, it went to spam, to my spam folder.
Okay, right, because it's all by email.
It was via email, so it goes to my spam folder, and because of that, I get the invoice later than, obviously,
right.
4 or 5 days later. I send it to you, which was already late,
right?
And we were supposed to have a meeting, and the first payment was supposed to be made, but I sent that to you a few days before that.
And I didn't even know about it because I was running to the airport to get to the meeting, which, all of this was going on. Finally, we get this sorted out. We have the meeting. Payment's still not made because I'm flying from here to there. And finally, we sorted out when we're all in the room.
Right.
A smart contract would have handled all of that. There would have been no email. First of all, let's eliminate our clutter on our inboxes. Right. We got enough of that. Right. Email's 40 years old. Enough. Okay. Let's be a little smarter than that. It was the killer app 40 years ago. It's not anymore. Right. The second thing is a PDF is a static contract. Now, the important thing is, so it doesn't do the invoicing. If this was in a smart contract, that would have all just been in one place. It would have then taken the next step for me. That's smart, right?
Yeah, it would trigger activities and events that we wanted to happen initially, that I didn't have to get involved. 2 other people in an ad agency didn't need to get involved. So we had... And
their accounts receivable people don't need to get involved.
Exactly. So we had 4 different people trying to track things down at different points in time.
That's right.
So wasted time, wasted energies, wasted costs, versus something that could have simply been set up front to do what we want it to do.
And I want to take it one step further, Jay. I want to take what smart means. And this is smart business. Let's just understand that contract started the beginning of a new relationship with vendor, a new relationship with the people who are that vendor, and it's a relationship that we want to have that's positive, right? So now they're going to do something, and there's going to be another payment due. And guess what? Because it's PDF and paper, it has to all go through the same thing again. Right. Did they do their thing? Did they deliver their stuff? No, I don't want to do that anymore. I just want to go, oh, good, that got delivered, click, there goes the payment. It's smart business. It eliminates so many things. It eliminates chasing. It eliminates you're looking through your email, your spam folders. Like PDFs are not smart. They're dumb.
Right.
They're just dumb pieces of paper.
And I can unilaterally change. I can go in and edit a PDF.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. In a smart contract, you see every single thing without ever asking Dan. On our system today, I can see if he looked.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I've got a log. I can see if it's a click, if he opened it. And I know when he signed it. I know when the payment went through. I never have to ask anybody. I can do all this on my phone. On my phone. I could have been flying through the airport going, good, that's all taken care of. It took me 30 seconds over a cup of coffee. I do it every single day in my own business. Over a cup of coffee, Jay and Dan, I never, ever, ever ask a developer if they're on track with their projects, because we do it all by smart contracts.
Because you can see it.
Because all I have to do is, if they forgot to post something or whatever, it doesn't matter. I just click the log and I see they viewed it. At least I know they know.
Right.
Sometimes I might have to ask them, where are you at?
Yeah.
But that's about it.
Well,
that's a smart contract.
I would ask everyone on the call to just think about the last week and how many times have you had to follow up on different things. And it doesn't have to just be a contract, but something that is downstream from something that you've already started.
And how many times have you sent out an email and then immediately forgotten about it? And then 2 weeks later, the person comes back to you and says, hey, I thought we were supposed to have a meeting. And you're like, oh yeah. But if you had been doing it throughout, you would have an update. Hey, you forgot to do this.
Right. That's right. And that's what smart business, running smart means. That's what accessible collaboration means. Right. The other thing, getting back to how this all ties to that seat fee, is guess what? I don't have to charge that person on the other end a seat fee to collaborate with me.
Right.
It just happens. Of course I want people to collaborate with me. That's how business gets done. Why should they have to pay to do business with me? Right. A seat fee. Right. That's dumb.
Yeah. So on to the next question. Raul is asking, speaking of regulations and regulators, how do you see government using blockchain to improve relationships with people? Because there are so many regulations that choke business. Do you see an application for blockchain in government relations?
The answer is, I actually wrote a future-looking short piece on what blockchain in 2025 will look like with the government. And effectively, when we're talking about government, the government that we have, what we operate under, regardless of the country we live in, is a social contract. We live with a social contract. Our social contract has taxes. Our social contract has laws. Our social contract has regulations and responsibilities. And in our social contract, we expect our public servants to do things that are important for our society and beneficial for our society. So as in different countries and cultures, we use that differently, but it's still a social contract. So what about the social smart contract, right? What about privacy? What about security? What about what you promised me as a government and what I promised to you do as a citizen? Everything we talked about is follow-up. Most government bureaucracy is follow-up. Right. It's follow-through. Think of the IRS.
Yeah.
Or in Canada.
That's what I just thought about.
Right?
My property taxes, it doesn't matter what it is. If you just click on something, have something happen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So interestingly, you'll see this in government registry, you'll see it in land registry, you'll see it in taxes. Interestingly, this morning I was at Starbucks, opened up my email, and one of the first things that came out was, I think it was the Department of Defense, was talking about, with the government, we need to support the government inclusion, accessibility, and collaboration with SMEs, or small to medium-sized enterprise. And that's what they're talking about. Most businesses, 90% of all jobs are generated by small to medium-sized enterprise. Every one of those people that work there are citizens. This is a government issue, and governments need to be adopting blockchain to make it more efficient. They know that. The governments know that. And in fact, next week I'll be meeting with a most likely a very high level government official from a country. And I will be talking about that, where we look at what does blockchain really mean? And we're doing that all over the world. I've met with some governments already, and it's going to be fascinating to see how this affects our society, and important. It will help us all.
The adoption and how
Yeah.
it's used. And,
Yeah.
and we think of blockchain as some huge, big thing, but when you think about just simple contracts and simple things that you do in your everyday
Yeah.
life,
This is-
there's a reason why there's going to be adoption, and this is going to scale.
This is as logical as, for those of us who remember, going from mailing paper contracts to the fax machine, from the fax machine to the email, from email to a digital signature. Blockchain, smart contracts is simply the next step. It's just the next evolution. And you don't need to get hung up on how blockchain works. What you need to look at is, historically, this has always happened. And this is the next major innovation change. Do I call it disruptive? No, I call it transformational. And we've lived through lots of transformations in the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
This is the next big transformation. If you missed it the last time, don't miss it this time. Be part of it. Help it happen.
So our last question is from Rowena, and Rowena wants to know, she runs an esports company. Are you familiar with that? Where people actually do gaming online, and it's becoming a big digitalized business. And she says, what applications would Blockcerts have for something like that, which is a virtual business to begin with?
Well, I'm not sure I understand esports, so you'd have to define it for me, because I don't game online. In fact, to be really candid, I do so much of my life online that the last thing I want to do when I'm offline is get back online and play a game. So if you can explain it to me, I can probably answer the question.
Okay, so let's take esports out of the equation, and let's look at digital lives and how we're moving into a more digital world, and how that's going to affect us, and how blockchain can play a part of that.
Well, I think the biggest thing about blockchain and digital lives is we all have a digital footprint now. And if you don't understand what your digital footprint means, I'm going to give you two examples. One which is very real to most people out there, called Facebook, and what happened with Cambridge Analytica, and how our digital information that was shared on Facebook was used to analyze and or influence political trends. That's what that was all about. That's your digital footprint. That's the wrapper around you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now how important is that, and does that have an impact on life in and of itself? So the first time I ever experienced or learned about what a digital, or started thinking about how impactful this was about, oh gosh, it's going back 9 years ago now. And what happened was a wedding party in Pakistan got killed by US drones.
Mm-hmm.
And the US drone warfare was going on against terrorism, and because of the digital footprint, it looked like that was a terrorist gathering. And so the drones came in and took out all of these people at a wedding. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about data and we talk about a digital footprint, by the way, I'll give proper credit. That was from Dr. Vasko, not me. And Dr. Vasko is my son, but that's where I learned it before he was a doctor. He's almost a doctor, but anyway. So I learned it from that, and it made a huge impact on what I believe is important, and we should all believe is important, which is how do we protect our data? So the one thing I'd say is, if at the minimum you understand this about blockchain, you should own a token, you should own your own personal identity, you should own the data and the privacy that you have online, and make sure that when you have the opportunity in the future to control that, because it will become incredibly important. And it's going to be important from a health standpoint. It's going to become important from a financial standpoint, a family standpoint, a privacy standpoint, and then maybe even a monetization or a money earning standpoint. If you're going to be used by Cambridge Analytica, great, but should Facebook get paid, or should you? It's your data, Jay.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, I appreciate that. And Rowena, just to let you know, it sounds like you have an interesting business, and we'd be happy to talk to you about how we can apply Blockcerts to your business. We just need to learn more about it.
Yeah, as soon as somebody gives us a business case, it's quite possible to make any business that is digital. Some of the things I know about gaming is how the gamers have avatars and things like that, but I really need to know more about what the business is in order to tell you how to utilize tokens to make it more effective.
Okay, we had one more question come in just under the wire, so we're going to go ahead and go with it.
Okay.
And
One more.
if I'm a sheep farmer and I have 1,000 head going to market, how can I use Blockcerts to track my product from farm to fork?
That's a really important one. That's a really good one. So first of all, if you have 1,000 head of sheep going to market, and this is a fact in the food business, about 40 to 60%, this isn't necessarily true with sheep, but 40 to 60% of all food goes to waste or rots before it ever gets to market. So the first thing is that we're going to take those sheep and we're going to provide what the source of that is. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to get them listed in the supply chain as these are Jay's 1,000 head of sheep. This belongs to his farm or whatever. So you now have them marked onto the chain. Now that I know what a sheep is, and as that sheep moves through the process from going from the farm into the feedlot, into the sorry sheep, either you're going to get sheared or you're going to get butchered or we're going to eat you. As you go through that process, every one of those steps is now marked to the blockchain on a hash. Now what I can do is I can get really some very interesting things. One is the feedlot might need to know transparently when those sheep are coming in.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps going, and I'm going to speed this up because it's a fairly complex process, but then it can go to when is the trucking company going to come in? Is this fresh meat or is it frozen meat? If it's going to a high-end restaurant, it might be fresh. And at the end of that $40 meal, where I want to see, was this ethically gathered? Was it all truly grain-fed? All of that marketing stuff that makes it worth me paying $40 for that piece of meat, or the Kobe beef, or whatever. Is it really Kobe beef that I'm eating? I don't know. Yeah. Now I do, because it's transparent. So I can see that. As a farmer, all the way back at the source, you also get transparency and get to participate more clearly in the pricing of your product. And that's what makes it more equitable. You don't get to do all the marketing, or you don't get disintermediated by the distributor on all the marketing and so forth, and you even get to save money. Maybe you want to set up a more direct supply, like farm to fork supply chain, and you want to just drive it around to the restaurants in your area. Great. There's a lot of restaurants popping up like that. So there's many, many applications in the supply chain. Again, keep in mind this. It all boils down to your business model. What is your business model, and how can you take advantage of these giant holes in the marketplace, these giant gaping facts that either cost money or are inefficient, to become both a better farmer, better citizen, and better capable of handling your business or the transactions that you're doing.
Great, Tim. Well, thanks for your time today. Thank you, Dan.
Absolutely. Great to have you here in Denver.
Appreciate everyone joining us on the call. And don't forget, next week, Ask Me Anything, 11 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. Tim will be in either Boston or New York. I'll be in London, and Dan will be here. Oh, Dan will be on the road in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So we're decentralizing
So we're
again.
decentralizing, distributed networks. It's all about that. Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next week.